Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about the media and how they control people's perception by controlling the narrative. I came to think about this the other day when I was in the library and I was reading through this paper called The Economist. Many of you probably know which paper it is. This is like an international newspaper, but it's from England. And I read this article about Ukraine and Russia and that whole crisis over there, and what I came across was what a disgusting propaganda I saw in the article. And at one point it got so ridiculous that they were even trying to compare Russia's foreign policy to that of Nazi Germany's foreign policy, which is just fucking ridiculous for anybody who knows a little about what's going on over there. But what I came to think about is the fact that this is a certain narrative that they're following, and you can find this narrative in different publications all over the world. It's like you can find this in a Swedish newspaper, you can find this in an American newspaper, in a British newspaper, wherever. As long as it's establishment and corporate media, you'll find it there. And the narrative is simple. It basically goes something like this: the Russians are scary, and beware of their crazy Asperger leader, Putin. And also remember that the US and EU just want to promote democracy in Ukraine and have their best interest at mind. And Putin hates democracy, and Putin is willing to risk World War III in order to stop it. That's the basic narrative. I'm sure I left out some things, but that's basically it. And you can see this narrative being played out in all over the place, whether it's on CNN, or if it's in like that publication I read the other day, or in a Swedish newspaper. I mean, that's the basic narrative. The articles may differ. The articles from a very same country may differ. They may have a different angle, but that's the narrative. You're supposed to be afraid of Russians. That's the basic narrative. And sometimes in order to keep this propaganda, in order to keep that narrative, it gets really ridiculous. Like the other day I was looking through this newspaper called, I was looking online, it's called Svenska Dagbladet, which is basically, it's a newspaper here in Sweden, and it's basically a Wall Street owned newspaper. Anyway, the article was about a Russian tank, the new Russian tank. Oh yeah, let's be afraid of the Russian tank. And the thing was, it was so ridiculous. They even had a little line there where it said, "Oh, this can start an arms race." I mean, that's just how ridiculous it is. I mean, why should a Swedish newspaper have an article about a Russian tank in the first place, and then suggest that it might start an arms race? But you see, the article is different than the one I read about, the one I read in the Economist. But it's the same narrative. It's, oh, be afraid of Russia, be afraid of Putin, oh, they're dangerous. I mean, if you contrast that to, for example, if when Israel or a US or any European country would come out with some new weapon system, you would never hear them suggest that, well, this might be a start of an arms race. No, it's only when it's the big bad Russians, right? And so it goes, of course, it was Iran too. They have to keep a certain narrative, and in this case I've chosen to use mainly this Ukraine and Russia thing to show that. But this narrative, this thing with keeping the narrative, is the same when it comes to many things. Whether it's Al-Qaeda or 9/11 or Ukraine and Russia, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. The method is simple. You use propaganda in order to keep a certain narrative, in order to control people's perception, to make them have an opinion that is beneficial to your agenda. That's how simple it is. And in order to keep that, you'll distort information, you'll tell half-truths, you might keep, let's say there's a whole story, you just tell half of the story, and then the other half you don't put it in there, and then you propagandize the half that you're telling, so that people's perception, it just stays a certain way. That's what they do, and it works very well, because a lot of people just read these mainstream publications and they just watch the regular mainstream media and the state-run media, and that's what they get. They don't get the whole story. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. How they can control people's perception by controlling the narrative, giving people a false narrative, but basically only giving them the narrative, just in different ways, through different articles and media venues and so on. Anyway, thanks for watching.